Welcome back to Mark Holbit's vlog, everyone. Thanks for joining in on this wonderful, glorious, and sensationally sunny kind of a day. And here we have the F Type. I just got it back from the shop. As you saw last week, I had the car in. I had to take it in for some work. Not repair, not mechanical work per se, but there's some modifications. And I want to speak to this because the modifications I did today are something that I would strongly advise. I mean, after all, we spoke on previous videos about the fact that these are at the end of the rope, the end of the line, and you probably want to take care of it, if not for two reasons. Well, number one, of course, if you do decide to sell it at some point, you want to get your maximum resale, so you want to make sure that the car shows well and it's taken care of and it's well maintained, it has good records by the dealer and shops, because then that's going to be easy to transfer over to the new owner. The new owner has a booklet of paperwork they can review and look, and the car shows well, and it's going to be an easy car to sell. But that's the one reason. The main reason why I see this is because I do plan to hold on to this car for quite some time. We also know that there are no more cars available after 2024, and it's a sad state of affairs because, in fact, that's just where we're at. The EV market is kicking into high gear. And whether you believe that the future exists with electrified vehicles or not, and I truly don't believe that is the answer, but I mean, clearly the industry as a whole is basically saying that that's where we're headed. Electric vehicles, or certainly hydrogen power vehicles, are a couple of the options that are being explored today. And a lot of the nuances are being worked out as far as battery changes, battery life, charge time, all those things are being worked on. But the fact that remains is the sad state of affairs. Jaguar has gone all in and said that by 2025, they will no longer have one of these available. So what does that mean? Well, if you like these cars and you want to hold on to it for a while, the way I see it is you probably want to take care of it. And again, whether you want to sell it or you want to keep it, and for my reason, it's to keep it. So I want to take care of it and make sure it lasts. Well, how do you keep these things from deteriorating so quickly? Or how do you prevent yourself from having to throw parts at these cars, when you don't have to? Are there ways that we can prevent some of that damage to these vehicles, or some of the repairs that might be needed just because of carelessness, because of, environmental conditions or what have you? Yeah, there's things you can do. I spoke in previous videos, some of the things that I've done to this car to hopefully buy it extra life. It also saves you money. So sometimes I'm of the believer that you have to spend money to make money. And this is a classic example of the F Type here, where there's some things that I've done to it and I continue to do to it to ensure that I can save money down the road as a result of doing some of these things. So I want to talk about the upgrade that I did today. And I think it's important. Maybe not everybody can appreciate this. I mean, everybody lives in different places. Where I live, the road conditions, the weather's harsh, and it takes a toll on a lot of vehicles. But honestly, there are very few places on this planet that don't have the same conditions that I'm talking about. And I think it's worth talking. I just want to bring that to light. Like I have said this before, you can always rebuild an engine. You can always, replace a water pump or drop in a fuel injector, and those things are pretty easy. What's harder to do are fixing body panels and doing body work, because yeah, while there's experts at it, it never quite looks the same. And yeah, you could put a top end rebuild into an engine and then you basically hit the road and life's good and nobody knows the better and you have a new lease on life. But if you do have to do some body work, clearly it's one of those scenarios where you might find yourself with less than perfection, and then you have a vehicle that never quite looks the same. And so that's why I want to talk about a couple of the mods I did. And actually today, I actually got the vehicle back because I want to speak of the modifications I did and kind of why I did that, truly why. And this, again, speaks back to the video I did previous week or previously, and really I hope it all ties together for you, because I think it's important that we consider doing some of these things. If you want to keep your F Type for some time, I personally think it's worth spending the money on. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Maybe it's a waste of time or money. I think there's value added, but let's take a look. So as you can see right in front of us here, we have the F Type, and I want to mention a few things I've done in the past, and I've showed you guys all before. I think it's important to put things like paint protection film on there. I've done that. Of course, we want to keep the car looking spanky, and that's part of the way that I've done. Those are some of the things that I've done to keep the car looking as spanky as it does, is because I ensure I've got paint protection film on you know, all over the body panels here. I've even put it on the headlights, because when you start road rashing those headlights, they start looking horrible, and they're quite expensive to replace too. So those are previous things I've done. I mean, previously as well, I've done the mirrors, and I've done the A-pillars as well, because you typically get blast zones here with rocks and rocks on here. And then down at the bottom as well, on the rocker panels, I've also done paint protection film all the way up, and including this gap here. So those are areas that are well known to get just demolished by rocks and chips and all that good stuff. I mean, just look at all this gravel on the road. I mean, it doesn't take very long to figure out that a lot of roads have this kind of junk on there, and of course that spits off the tires off of a vehicle in front of you, and then you get splattered with that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, that basically just results in a vehicle, if you don't have film or some kind of protection. You know, the old days, they used to have those bras. Remember those old vinyl bras that you'd wrap on the front of the vehicle, and then they'd kind of hook along in here, and then they'd have those top edges, those little pointy things, and they'd flip and flop, and they'd basically bang around on your hood. The worst thing was with those bras, and I had one on previous vehicles. The problem with that is you end up getting sand and grit that kind of goes underneath those bras, and then they scratch the paint, and then also the paint, you know, discolors, and so you have different scenarios there. So it doesn't look that hot with those bras, but it was one solution to at least keep the front end from getting all road rashed. But today, the modifications I did, and I spent some money. So I want to say I spent 550 bucks on the one item, and I spent about 400 on the other. Let's take a quick look here. And right here, as you can see, I actually have installed, and you can almost see it, there's almost a different color, a different hue shining off the windshield here, because in fact I added a product called Clearplex. Clearplex is not like paint protection film. Paint protection film, this has sort of a rubbery coating to it. So I didn't put that on here. I put a product called Clearplex, and it's more of a hard plastic. It's almost something that you put on your cell phone covers and that type of thing. Now, it's very difficult to install. I've tried installing that myself on previous cars, and it's very, very, you have to be meticulous, very difficult. It doesn't conform very well on the curved windshields, and you got to use a lot of heat and patience to get that on there. But what it does essentially gives you another layer of protection, and that layer then essentially takes, if there's a rock that hits that glass, it spreads and distributes that force. Instead of hitting a pointed area, it spreads that across a larger space, and rarely do you end up with an actual crack on your windshield. When you take rocks of decent size, even, I've seen people test that by throwing a golf ball at the windshield and there's not a mark on it, or even a sizable rock. I saw it demoed once where there was this installer in the US, I saw it on YouTube once, where there's an installer, they threw a rock at the windshield, a rock like this size, and it didn't even damage or crack the windshield. Now, I mean, it's not perfect, and I mean, there's no guarantees in anything. There's no guarantees in life, but when I saw those demonstrations and I heard about it, I started looking into it. Now, there are some limitations on this stuff, and I think, again, I do stand by, I believe this is a very, very worthwhile mod to put on your vehicle. Any vehicle. It doesn't matter if you're driving the F Type or a Porsche or a Ferrari. Most Ferrari owners I know, or Lamborghini owners I know, eventually put that type of film on there, because those windshields cost, you know, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to put a new windshield in. Not to mention you have to wait to get it. It's going to usually be shipped overseas. It also means that the installers are going to cut all the seals, and then it's never quite the same. So if you can do anything in your power to eliminate or reduce the amount of times you have to change that front glass, the better off you are. It's not even just about insurance, because I do have insurance on this vehicle, and I was able to get that windshield replaced. But I said to myself, once I put a new windshield in here, I will follow that up with some Clearplex, because then it gives me another lease on life, gives me another barrier. Now, of course, it's 550 bucks for the Clearplex to do that. That's installed, the material and everything. Not super cheap, but I consider it good value. And certainly, if you saw my other video, $2,400 is what it ended up costing the insurance company to get that new windshield put in there. So $2,400 versus $550, I think that's a cheap piece. Now you say, well, okay, but that's out of insurance. Yeah, but there's still a deductible of 250 bucks. So that $500, I was told, if you drive it summertime only, you're probably going to get 3, 4, maybe 5 years out of that Clearplex. Even let's say 5 or 6 years, depends on how much you push it. I'm going to try to push as far as I can. But basically, if you can get 5 years out of that, that might get you 2 or 3 windshields and as well, not the inconvenience, also not the hassles and the issues with insurance companies. You may even consider dropping your insurance. I'm not advising you to do that. I'm not your financial advisor, but I will say that's something to think about. So there are limitations, so it's not perfect. What you do get is a little bit of haziness looking through the front windshield, but I want to show you, I want to demo that for you from the inside of the vehicle. After we finish here, I want to give you a quick, how does this actually look from the inside looking out? Anyhow, besides that, there's other things. They say you can't wash it for 30 days. It's got a cure time. It needs about 30 days to sort of get all that sorted out. Then once you're done there, they don't suggest pressure washing it too aggressively or not at all. Ideally, you're also going to use a microfiber towel if you want to wipe it down. Also, if you're driving your car in the wintertime, you get ice and frost on the windshield. They say basically don't use your ice scraper on there. You'll destroy that film. So again, there's some compromises there, absolutely. We also can't forget that you're going to have situations where you're going to get more hazy with age, with time. This film can yellow, it can scratch, and the more you use your windshield wipers, the more chances you're going to get scuffs and scrapes on that plastic. So there's downsides. So if you're driving in a lot of harsh conditions, a lot of aggressive elements, maybe a lot of winter driving, I don't know if it's necessarily the best product for you. But if you're certainly driving a car that has a high dollar windshield and you typically drive it in sunny weather, then it's absolutely the modification for you. I also did another little modification here, and you can't see, but on the roof, this here, we know I have a glass roof. Of course, I did not put clear Plex on here because even though it's glass, sure, but I was told because this sits on a horizontal, it sees even more direct sunlight, and because it's a darker background, there's more heat that emits from the dark background, and you wind up getting distortion. You wind up getting possibly waviness. It starts to turn yellow early and prematurely. And so the installer suggested I do not put Clearplex on that glass top for that reason. But I've also heard people actually had to replace those windshields to the tune of $3,000 or $5,000 or even more because they're not cheap on top. And we've talked about that. So what they actually recommended and I installed was more of the expel film that they typically use on paint protection film. And we use that up here because it'll tend to level out, it'll settle down nicely. And the reason you use this Clearplex versus the actual expel is more rubbery. So the rubbery won't work well with windshield wipers, but the windshield wipers work well on this because this is a harder type shell. So that's why you use that specific product with your windshield washer and with your windshield wipers, and that is clearly why you need to make the differentiation. So up here you can use either or product, but again the sun takes a toll, and that plastic on Clearplex doesn't seem to hold up as well with the sun. It tends to get hazy and yellow, and it hardens up, and it's just not as nice a product when you're putting it on horizontals and darker surfaces like that. So I opted to go with the other film, the expel film, like the nose, like on the nose there, and the paint protection film we put on the roof. So the idea there is it's not quite as aggressively robust as the this film here on the windshield, Clearplex, but it will give me a little added protection, a little added insurance, so that even if I take decent sized rocks off of there, the idea is to eliminate any kind of cracks or damage on the roof, because clearly you don't want to start having to replace that or that. And this talks about that whole idea of like when, 5-10 years rolls down the road, and the idea of maybe these cars aren't as well serviced or supported by the dealers and the dealer networks, as I mentioned in the previous video, then at least the idea is if you can save yourself some of those other parts, the glass and those things, I figure it will save money in the long run too, because if I manage to save a couple of big rock hits and prevent a glass shattering, that's just money saved. So the idea is, I truly believe you want to keep your F-Type or any other great car, higher dollar car typically, because again, the windshield itself is kind of pricey. I wouldn't suggest, if you got a car and if you do shop around and you find a glass shop and they say they can put a new windshield in your car for 250 bucks, obviously the basic math behind it, you don't bother putting Clearplex on there. That's only typically to even considered if you have a windshield that, if I would say if your windshield is, maybe $1,000 or $1,500 or more, then definitely look at that. I want to put it on the Lambo I had. The problem was I had a little rock chip and it wasn't spidered or anything, but the installer looked at it and said, well, there's a bit of a risk. So if you have a windshield that's almost less than perfect, the installers may not install that Clearplex for you, because when they apply heat to it, it could just all of a sudden spider and crack, and then you've really screwed the windshield. So if you've got damage on your windshield already, Clearplex, forget about it. It's really, once you've done a windshield, if it's a pricey windshield glass, I would suggest maybe consider doing that. But again, a lot of it boils down to your insurance, your deductible, you know, how much inconvenience you want to experience when it comes time to replace a windshield. It's all kind of part and parcel. So it's some economics you have to think about. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys today. One of the most important mods on your F-Type is clearly paint protection, glass protection as best you can. Because, you know, when a car starts to deteriorate because of rock chips and all that nasty that flies off the road, then it starts looking like crap. And when it starts looking like crap, you don't feel the sense of pride of ownership. And then, of course, the car deteriorates. It's a snowball. You care less because it doesn't look as good, and then that just deteriorates even faster. So I would suggest take care of it with good paint and glass protection. But here, I promise, let's show you from the inside of the vehicle what it actually looks like. Let's go for a short drive here and let's take a look. But I'll show you through the roof as well. Let's look. So looking out the roof, as you can see, it doesn't hamper anything. You don't see any waviness. You don't see any kind of weird, you know, convoluted, you know, nothing. It's perfect. So basically you're good with that. I don't worry about it. So now you've got an extra added layer of protection. This upper section here with Expel only costs about $400 installed. So you know what, to me it was worth it. I'm just going to close that up for a second. Then what we'll do is we'll look through the front windshield. Let's go for a quick drive, and then maybe you can take a look for yourself. But let's take a look here. First glance is it looks great. Now, one thing I will notice is there's a very, very faint sort of fogginess, not wavy or any of that, not scratchy distortion, just a fogginess, almost like you've applied a small filter from your, you know, your camera phone, just a very, very, very mild filter. That's what it looks like. There's just this very light sensation of a foggy, you know, as you look through that. And so let's just close this up and go for a quick drive. There we are. Yeah, what is a drive in the F-Type if you don't hit dynamic mode? Give her one or two of these. Throw her in drive, and away we go. You don't see anything that is alarming here. Everything looks pretty swanky and spanky, and as you can see, I can see just fine out of the glass right now. I have no issues at all. Everything seems to be good. And of course, that's just, I mean, look out every angle. It seems to be just perfect. And I didn't see a whole lot. You know, when I first took the car, there was a slight couple of little waves down in the center area. But they do say that a lot of those wavies sort of work their way out. If there's any moisture or soapy bubbles in the film, eventually that's part of the curing process, that 30-day time frame. Essentially lets all of that sort of waft out, and eventually what you're left with is just that second layer of protection, and you don't see too much wavy. Again, all I say is you're going to probably see a little bit of very, very slight fog. I've talked to people who've owned these in the past and said basically what you can see with time, and with enough time logged, you can start to see that yellowing and light scratching and scuffing because of your windshield wipers. What do we have here? We have some goose here trying to make their way across the road. Look at those guys. Hey, yeah, no, I'll wait. That's okay. You guys take your time. Look at them squawk boxing over there. This guy's kind of angry looking right there. He's taking his time. He's pretty arrogant, but anyway, there we go. There we are. There you go, geesey. All right, so here we are. So yeah, I've heard that people say with time and the windshield wiper use and harder weather conditions will eventually wind up with light swirls, and they can be exaggerated at night when, you know, you got headlights coming at you, and you know, from cars that are coming, you know, in the opposite direction, you might actually see some of those swirls and scratches in that paint protection or the Clearplex coating. Like I said, there's nothing beats the actual film. There's a lot of manufacturers out there that spray a little layer of something, some kind of product, and I'm of the belief that nothing like that will ever be as good or as durable or robust as the actual film. And so I went with the film, and I truly believe that's the way to go if you want to do this right. But you may have to change it out every few years. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, do please drop a line. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it. Maybe it's a pointless waste of time doing these types of products. But that's what I did. That's what I decided to do. So let me know below. And as well as always, please do let your friends know. Do subscribe. Love to hear more from all of you. And I'm really trying to build the channel. So hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.